What's up, guys? My name is Max Conway. I own Conway Metal Tech in Doe Run, Missouri, and this is my first YouTube video, so bear with me because I've been on TikTok for a while, but I'm not a content creator. I'm a welder and basically a job shop guy. But this job, this 2009 GMC Sierra came in. To do this job, I have to replace this mount and the one on the other side. Problem is, there's no gap between that fuel tank and that frame, and I have to get this bolt out and driven back out through the other side of the frame, get the other mount on here, and get everything bolted back up. And when we do that, we're going to also replace the bushings in this leaf spring. So I have it jacked up. It's on jack stands, and then it's on jack stands back here. These are actually homemade jack stands that I made mostly for holding boats up off of trailers. But the driver's side is horrible. This truck's from Canada, so it is very rusty. And then this side's not that bad, but the customer already got the replacement brackets for both sides, so we're gonna go ahead and replace both sides. And here's the bed. It's up on the gantry. As you can see, the cross members on this bed have seen much better days. You can actually stick a screwdriver through most of this. That's not doing a whole lot for you. So, not long for the world, but we're going to at least try to get 4 mounting spots fixed up on this to where we can get it bolted down solid. They don't haul trailers with this. They don't haul anything with it. So, we're going to get it fixed up and safe for the road. Well, I just got the guard off of this fuel tank. Now I'm about to take these hanger strips off of the fuel tank, and I get to looking. This one is already broken, which is about par for the course for this rusty stuff. Yeah, so guess don't have to remove that one. And this one, I believe, is a 15. The guard was 13 millimeters. And then you look at the side of this frame, that's trying to fill right there. So, yeah, I would not keep this. As you can see, this side is not like that. Well, I have the floor jack with a block of wood to support it. The back one's broken, and the front one is just sitting there spinning. I've even tried to stick a pry bar in there and pry down while I take it back off, and it's not working, it's just spinning. So I'll come over here, I'm going to cut this bracket off up here at the top so I can just weld it back on once I'm done. But that will let me drop this tank down and get it out of the way. I've got to unhook some of these fittings over here and then some fittings on top of the tank, and I can drop it and get it out of my way. Since I can actually reach this from the top, I'm going to cut it from the top. That way I'm not laying underneath it when it comes loose. And I have a welding blanket on top and my Bluetooth grinder guard on. Now that that's cut off, it's dropped down a little bit. It's time to get all these connections popped loose and get these lines off of here and check and make sure nothing's going to hang us up. And then I can drop this tank out of my way. So as I was pushing this bolt back out to go through the hole in the frame, I realized it's actually hitting on the frame, which means that when that broke loose, the axle on this side shifted backwards because that shackle is able to move. and I'm gonna have to take measurement on the other side over there to find out the center line of where this bracket hole is supposed to go. Jack this forward with just a ratchet strap. That way I can go ahead and get the bolt out. So now it's time to get our measurements before we cut everything off. And we need two measurements. We need the center line of this bolt to the top of the frame, and then we need the center line of this bolt to, I'm going to pull to the bottom bolt on the shaft on the back, because it doesn't pivot, it stays with the frame. Those are two solid reference points that we can always find the same place. So for the top measurement, I'll put, you can use a ruler for this, I'm just using a tri-square or combination square. And I push it up against the back, and then I'll rock it until it sits nice and flat on that frame. I'll push up against the bottom, and it looks like 5.5. So I'll write it up here on some painter's tape. That way it's with the job. I'm not writing it on my hand, I'm not losing measurements. It also helps when I'm recording. And then I'll hook the back bolt. That looks like 63 3/8. Now that we have our measurements, I put a floor jack underneath the differential to keep it from falling down. And I will cut this loose and we'll let it down nice and slow. And I may end up having to take the shock loose to allow it to get out of my way to where I can get in there with a grinder and get it cleaned up for weld. As you can see, this frame is definitely rotted out underneath where that bracket was. I'm going to cut this small section out and replace it with a piece of steel that's the same thickness as the original frame. And then I'll probably end up running a piece of flat stock along the bottom and just welding horizontally with the frame to prevent any stress or cracks from appearing with these vertical welds on that patch plate. Now that I've got the frame fixed, I went ahead and found my measurements, made a center line for where the hole's supposed to be for clearance for this. And instead of running the bolt from the inside of the frame out, I just welded the nylock nut on the inside, which I'm still going to use some red Loctite on the threads just to make sure it stays. And then I stuck an arbor nut over those crosshairs that I marked, traced around it, and that would give me a big enough hole so I could cut it out with the plasma. Now I have everything laid out. The nut on the back side has clearance, and I can get that welded in and it'll match the other side. Now that side's done, and the passenger side's done. Well, I put the fuel tank back up there and got the back strap on. Went to put the front strap on, and it is way longer than the factory one. So luckily I have this front strap. I just cut off the tab on it. So I'm gonna put them side by side and rebend this one to match and shorten it up to where we can use it. Yeah, that's quite a difference in length. Oh well, I'll fix it. Well, I'd say that's pretty close. Now I've got my lines marked. I'm going to cut it probably right about here on this front line, and then I'm going to cut it back here right below, well, right about where this red line is, and then I'm going to transplant this section down to here and make sure they match. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Well, the paint job's ugly, but it was what was left over out of a can of like spray undercoating, and the last little bit of it just kind of globbed out on me. But it's coated enough to where it's not going to rust, and that's the main concern. I'm pretty sure the rest of the frame is going to be a bigger issue down the road, but pretty sure he's going to sell it or turn it into a farm truck. Well, we're just about ready to put the bed back on the truck. I want to go through and cut these off first and repair that part just so we'd have 4 mounting points. So I found some 2-inch square tubing, about 1/8 inch or 3/16 over there in the scrap pile, and I measured it out and drilled a hole. I'm gonna go ahead and weld that nut inside of that tube. That way you can take it off with one hand and it'll hold the nut. Well, the bed's back on. It's bolted in 4 places, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. The brackets are fixed. Axle's where it needs to be, and now it's time to pick up. This is definitely not how I would normally do this job, but the customer is working with a limited budget, so he just wanted to get back on the road. He's probably going to end up retiring this truck.